Welcome to E3, Engage and Empower with Empathy, a podcast brought to you by the Empathy Collective, a consulting firm that helps business leaders inspire change, one conversation at a time. I am your host and founder of the Empathy Collective, Rebecca Dhrimaj, and we are building a community of like-minded leaders and experts who all share the same passion, taking care of people at work. Whether you are a blue-collar worker or white-collar worker, small business owner or corporate executive, you belong in this community. From health and fitness to hospitality to the military, and then the life sciences industry, my guest today, Michelle Lavatai, has seen it all. Although her career journey has been incredibly diverse, one thing stuck with her like glue along the way: her ability to build strong, lasting relationships. Her most recent experience put her unexpectedly in a role as change leader, and this is where she discovered the power of relationship building in not only guiding herself and others through change and transformation, but also driving sustainable, lasting change. In this episode, we will unpack the relationship building domain of Gallup's CliftonStrengths and explore how this domain is often undervalued in business leaders. Stick with us to learn how we should be measuring change success and why relationships are key to navigating disruption and sustaining change. This is E3, Engage and Empower with Empathy. Welcome to the show, Michelle. It is a delight to have you here. I'm really excited to dig into this conversation and talk about strengths and talent and how they tie to change. And I know you're going to have a lot to say on this topic.
Thank you so much. This is one of my biggest areas of joy to get to talk about strengths, and I just find it so fun. So thank you for having me.
Well, let's continue the fun then. Let's talk about Gallup's CliftonStrengths. So you and I are both familiar with this, but for listeners who aren't aware of the CliftonStrengths methodology, I did interview someone who is a Gallup certified CliftonStrengths coach. I think he was maybe episode 4 or 5. So if you're curious and you're listening to this episode, I recommend you go back to the episode with Carlos Martinez, because he talks about this in more depth and what it means and how you can translate it into the workplace. But in essence, when someone takes the assessment, they really get a deep, detailed lens into what makes you uniquely you, what makes you special as a human, and what comes inherently or naturally to you, what's easy for you to do, what lights you up, whether it's at work or at home. And I particularly like this assessment because it gets more detailed into some of the typical personality assessments like Myers-Briggs or Insights or DISC. And all those assessments are fine, but I see CliftonStrengths almost as a complementary assessment to those, where you can kind of get even more insight into, okay, this is how I approach work, or this is how I approach people at home. But then what are my talents within that framework? Where do I excel? You just told me now this topic brings you such joy. Let's hear about your strengths, Michelle. What are your top 5 and how do they translate into your work and home life?
Thank you so much for posing the question. So my top 5 strengths are: number 1, relator; number 2, developer; number 3, belief; number 4, connectedness. I always have a hard time saying that one. And number 5, positivity. I always knew these things about myself, but I didn't really have a framework to help me communicate them to other people until I took this assessment and saw my results. And I was shocked at how accurately they described me. So relator is about how I invest deeply in those people around me. I thrive on meaningful relationships that go deep and yield trust and loyalty. And developer describes my passion for discovering those sparks of potential in people and calling it out. And I'm going to focus mostly on those two because that's what makes this so fun for me, is just talking about how we each have potential. It is something that it's my number 2 strength to call it out. So I want to focus on that a little bit. I've learned that praising strength as soon as I see it demonstrated is the most fun, because that person can realize in that moment, wow, I did just do that amazing thing. And the look of discovery on their face is my absolute favorite. But If I wait till the end of quarter awards or till I write them a Christmas card to tell them about the greatness that I see in them, they can easily dismiss it, right? But if I call it out while it's still hanging in the air, there's no way they can deny it. That way, I help them see the greatness that I see in them and they can start maximizing that potential. Most of us don't realize how amazing we are because we've always been us, and our uniqueness has become completely commonplace. So, my top 5 strengths make me someone who's tailor made to help others appreciate who they are. Did you know, Rebecca, Gallup has proven that the chances of 2 people having the same top 5 results in the same order is 1 in 33 million. There are 34 strengths, which were identified by Don Clifton when he created the assessment. And there's an option when you take the assessment to get a report that lists all 34 in the order they show up for you. And I was talking to a colleague one day and I mentioned the 1 in 33 million statistic related to the top 5. And I very hypothetically wondered what would be the chances of 2 people having all 34 in the same order? And my friend has learner as his number 1 strength. So he wanted to learn that piece of information and he went and figured it out. He came back with this number and I wrote it down because I don't even know how to say it. But 1 in this many is how likely it is that 2 people end up having the same 34 strengths in the same order. And you know what that tells me? Each person I meet is completely unique. Rebecca, I'll never meet anyone like you. Every opportunity I get to speak to you is a gift to me. I get to discover how you move and see the world. I get to witness your strength. I get to learn from you. And I get to encourage the individual that you are. This is my greatest joy. But there's also a limitation factor because I'm inclined to get so deeply involved with people. I tend to have a smaller network than some just because the sheer investment takes time.
Yeah, no, that's interesting with because you said relator is your number one, right?
Right.
Is that part of the traits of the relator talent where you tend to form more deep relationships with people so you have a smaller community, but a really tight one?
Absolutely. And it's funny because I can say I'm a people person and mean it. But because I'm a relator, what I mean by that is that I like to be with just a few people at a time and to go very deep in conversation and get to know them very well, as opposed to I can be that kind of people person. But if I walk into a room with 500 people, I kind of go numb. It's just because I would want to go deep with everybody and I can't, and it's overwhelming for me. So, yes.
I understand that sentiment entirely. I was just having a conversation with one of my family members the other day about how I love networking with people, but not in the sense of an extrovert networking, where you walk into a room of 500 people and you think, okay, how many of these 500 people can I meet today? That's definitely not the first thing that comes to my mind. I usually pinpoint a few people who I want to have deep conversation with, and that's usually how it ends.
Me too.
So I appreciate that. I am very curious because I mean I love that you shared the statistic about how it's very rare to find 2 people who have the same top 5 strengths in the same order. And I'm fascinated that 4 of your top 5 are in the relationship building domain. I myself have a mixture. I have some relationship building, some strategic thinking, some execution. So it's a bit of a mix of things, but you are so strong in the relationship building domain. And I invited you to this conversation because I wanted to place myself in your shoes, Michelle, and really understand what it feels like to be in domain of strengths where you're so deeply invested in relationship building. And the reason I want to have this dialogue with you is because I have this hypothesis that leaders who are natural relationship builders are the ones who can drive sustainable change in a team or organization. And don't get me wrong, the other domains are equally important. The strategic thinking domain keeps the leader's eye on the bigger picture. The influencer domain builds a following around the change, and the leader with strengths and execution obviously will help carry the change across the finish line. But what we tend to forget and also downplay the importance of with relationships is that they're built strategically with intention and with heart. And I always like to come back to a conversation I had with Urs Koenig, who's a former United Nations peacekeeper and also the author of Radical Humility. And I'll share a clip with you in a moment from our interview last year. I always share this clip in my change conversations workshops because he really drives home the message well of how relationships carry us through in times of crisis or disruption.
Bitte, bitte, in Krisen Köpfe kennen literally translated means in crisis, know the heads, as in know the people, right? And so the idea is that in crisis, pre-existing relationships are often more important than detailed flowcharts or orders or processes because it allows you to pick up the phone, call the right person, cut through red tape, and get stuff done. I often talk about building relationships as a preemptive move. We don't do this. Because we want to be nice or liked or kind. These are all good benefits, and it's the right thing to do. We do it because it builds trust, engagement, and commitment. So, talk about relationship building with a business purpose, and it always pays in the long run.
What is your experience using those talents to build relationships and therefore build resilience in a team?
Such a great question. Resilience is kind of a buzzword, isn't it? I'm not even sure we all define it the same way. But to me, it's an indicator of how well we weather adversity. And I realize your question is about team resilience, but if I can back out a bit and start with a broader picture, I think it might help. So when adverse circumstances arrive in our lives, and they always do, how do we feel? We often describe it as having our feet knocked out from under us, right? And sometimes that's even a literal thing. We've all seen movies with characters who buckle under the weight of adversity. Maybe the moment they receive a diagnosis or receive news of the passing of a loved one, or any of the very real things that happen in life. And if you're picturing this with me, you know the only way for those people to stay upright in that moment is if there are others there to catch their collapse and hold them up. And we need other people that we can lean on and whose support we can trust when adversity strikes. So now to your question about how I use my relationship building strengths to build resilience in a team, the answer that comes to my mind is preemptively. My strengths cultivate an environment where loyalty and trust can thrive. When our organizational structure is changed again, and when people are laid off, or as has just happened this week on my team, someone passes away, we can hold each other up. So there's an analogy that's been used quite a bit, but I think it's a great picture of resilience, and it's meaningful to me because I lived next to a redwood forest when I was a kid. Pine trees are among the tallest in the world. In fact, the tallest tree in the world is a redwood pine. And they get ginormously tall, but their roots are very shallow. They're only 5 or 6 feet deep. They do have the ability, though, to extend those roots sideways up to 100 feet. And as they do, they interlock with each other and with the trees around them. And this interconnectedness is what keeps them upright in the most adverse conditions. In fact, other trees with deeper but unsupported roots can topple in the same storm. Isn't that a beautiful picture of how relationship building can enhance resilience on a team? Because often adversity strikes the whole team at once. And that means it affects me at the same time it's affecting my teammates. And I can't necessarily show up as the strong one to brace my colleagues when my feet are being swept out from under me as well. And that's why having our root system in place or having built those relationships in advance is so important. We become resilient because we hold each other up.
I absolutely love that analogy. In fact, I immediately thought of your connectedness strength when you were
Right.
talking about the roots joining together.
There,
And I know that's your number 4, but
right.
I mean, it's all intertwined, isn't it?
Absolutely. It really is. And the strengths that we have play off of each other. And that's part of the uniqueness because I have such strong relationship building strengths that all my other strengths are sort of lent to, for example, my number 3 is belief, right? And so somebody can have belief amongst a lot of executing or strategic thinking strengths, and their belief is going to dictate how they execute or how they think. My belief, it determines how I approach people because it's surrounded by those relationship building strengths.
I would love to hear an example of how you've taken that belief as your compass and your approach to relationship building during a specifically trying time on the team? How what was
So,
the example, and how did you carry the team forward?
this is such an interesting topic. I might get slightly off topic here, but belief is an executing strength. Belief determines how I act. Connectedness is a relationship building, but it determines how I think. And I've always thought of belief as a thought process, right? So in this situation, in CliftonStrengths, it is an executing strength. So I believe so wholeheartedly that everyone has intense potential to become excellent at certain things. And so because I believe that with all my heart, I approach people that way, looking to draw out their greatness and bring up the positivity. That's my number 5. I just naturally see the things that are optimistic and hopeful and beautiful. And those are the things that I can offer to people, especially when they're having a down day or when something hard has happened. My natural instinct is to see the positive and to see something in that person that will help connect that positivity and then tease and bring it out. My entire team has been laid off, and it's a long layoff process, but we all know it's coming. And I was obviously among those who were given that news, and it swept my feet out from under me just as much as it did everyone else. But because of my positivity and because my belief that all things are connected, see how all the strengths play in here, I think I bounced back more quickly than some of my teammates who were more focused on thinking through how they were going to find another job, right? That's strategic thinking and executing strengths, which all that's important. But I was able to come alongside them with encouragement and to point out the positive things in the situation that I found. And actually, because this is the person I've been on this team for over 8 years now, people actually came to me seeking me out, knowing that I could help them feel better. What an honor. It's just the best.
I love that example, how you were able to balance out the strengths of other people on the team who may be going down a different rabbit hole,
Right.
help lift them up and bring them to a better place in their own time at their own speed.
Mhm.
But as people were naturally coming to you for support, how did you take care of yourself during that time and not take on too much of the emotional burden that your colleagues were experiencing?
Right.
Did that affect you at all?
Well, like I talked about with those redwood pines, I mean, the first instinct was we all grabbed onto each other and we all kind of embraced the pain. It wasn't easy. And I was actually surprised how hard it hit me. And it wasn't for me, it wasn't as much losing the job as the knowledge that I was going to lose the people. And so coming together and embracing each other in that moment was incredibly healing for me because these are my people, right? And then that helped me get my feet under me and to be able to turn around and help them get their feet under them too.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I'm also interested in the positivity strength because I think some people can mistake
They
positivity for what I would call toxic positivity, where you're not exercising empathy and you're basically brushing aside what the other person is going through, and you're just bringing in the positive cheerleader mentality without taking their emotions into consideration. Can you talk about how positivity plays out for you in that non-toxic way?
Yes, before somebody knew me, I've been described as a cheerleader. Somebody once hired me for a job because their wife was my friend and wanted me to do this job for them. And he came to me very honestly and said, I'm doing this for her. To me, you're a bit too cheerleadery for this position. And by the end of that, he had completely changed his mind and he came back and made sure that he made that right because there's a difference between being superficial and actually being able to see someone and understand who they are and helping them to see the best in themselves and the situation around them. When it's sincere, it doesn't come off cheerleader ish. When it's called out in the moment, like, look, this is good and it's happening right now. And to help them see it, then they can absolutely believe it because it's genuine, it's true, it's real. There's always good that comes with the bad. And some people just tend to see the bad first. And for some reason, me with my positivity strength, I see the beauty in things, and I'm thankful for it because sometimes I think it gets me through some really hard things that otherwise might pull me down.
I'm sure it does, and that actually ties nicely into the other question I had for you around leaders and the way they are evaluated for performance. I actually got an email in my inbox. I subscribe to the Gallup newsletter, so maybe you received it as well, but I think it was yesterday. And the title really caught my attention. I'm sure that was intentional on their part, but it was something like um, anemic employee engagement or something along those lines. Anemic. And basically, the insights that were gleaned from Gallup's research were that employee engagement is at an all-time low, and especially leaders. And so their point they were trying to make is there is a leadership development issue happening in workforces today. It's causing individual contributors to basically check out and quiet quit, and people leaders are burning out. So I really think all these things that you were just telling me about and how you use relationship building to not only create your own resilience as an individual, but then take that and carry it over to a team. That's why I think it's so important that people leaders have this set of skills, whether it's an innate talent or it's something that they acquire as a new skill. So I'd love to know your thoughts on how do you think people leaders should be measured from a performance perspective, especially when you're having to carry people through constant change and disruption, which let's face it, that's happening all the time. Doesn't matter if you're about to have a layoff, change is happening to us on a daily basis. So I think it's an absolute required skill for a people leader to have. But I don't feel like people leaders are measured on relationship building skills. They're measured on execution and their ability to drive results. What is your perspective on that?
I think you're absolutely right. And I'm finding it hard for me to navigate because everything is set up to measure your hard skills. So from your resume, that's all they want to know: what you've done, how long you've done it, and how you've been rewarded for it. Um, job descriptions. This is what you will do. And then your performance review. How well did you perform, right? And so it's definitely a system made up for checking for those execution and strategic thinking types of strengths. It's such a loaded question that you've just asked me, and I'm so grateful to you for asking it because it's not just something that I am finding, but I know it's also a focus of the company you recently launched. And when I really thought about it, I think there was a time when people expected some misery at work. I mean, have you ever noticed in the older TV shows that there was a production floor and the boss had the office upstairs, and he or she would quite literally look down on their staff from their perch up there on high. They would bark orders, and the lowly employees would put their heads down and do as they were told, hoping that maybe one day they could be the person upstairs talking down to everyone else. That no longer flies, right? Today's employees do not want to be micromanaged. They aren't nearly as content to do something just because they've been told to do it. They want to know why it matters. They want to feel connected to the mission. They want a manager who coaches and mentors more than they boss. And they need someone who cares about them and can provide hope and individualized personal development for their future. Let's be honest, when change is announced to the people who it impacts, it is not the first conversation. There have been, closed door meetings among those in the know for a long time. And I'm not saying that shouldn't happen. It absolutely should. There should be an executable plan in place prior to rolling out change. But what I think should be just as important is the preparation of the leader who will manage those people through the change, because there's going to be emotions and it's going to be messy and there's no roadmap to follow. So if that leader has not built close-knit relationships or isn't adept at building trust, things are going to go sideways, right? I found this piece of information astounding. A survey highlighted by Forbes found that the majority of Americans, get that, the majority, would forego a raise and to see their boss fired instead. That shows contempt. They want something traumatic to happen to their managers. They want them to experience hardship, and they would pay to see it happen. You know what that tells me? Most businesses do not have the right people in place to manage and drive sustainable change. If employees feel that way about their leaders, they're not going to suddenly rally around them when things get hard. If there's no loyalty, where's the motivation to pivot? So I want to point out something you said earlier, Rebecca. Every strength has its advantage. If a leader excels in strategic thinking, executing, or influencing strengths, they do bring something crucial to the table. If they lack relationship building abilities, though, and if they haven't built resilience into their team's DNA, their team may not survive major change, and they certainly would be hard pressed to thrive in it, right? So I think it's safe to expect that change is unsustainable for most leaders. And the answer to your question was, how can business better evaluate the impact of a leader on his or her ability to drive sustainable change? I say you have to look at the team. If they're interconnected, or are they a group of individuals who are working and acting as individuals individually? Is there trust between them and their boss? And if there is, then they're likely to weather change more gracefully. But you have to ask, why is it? And I think this is really important, because if you have a deeply collaborative team who genuinely looks out for each other, is that because of their leader or because someone else on the team is acting as that glue? So you specifically asked this question in light of my experience. We haven't discussed too much more than my top 5, but my number 6 and 7 are harmony and empathy, which are also relationship building, which means that only one in my top 7 is not. Because of my strengths, the teams I have worked on, whether I was the manager or the employee, have all eventually grown close. It isn't always the leader who builds this into a team, and that's okay. In fact, that's great. But for a leader without relationship building skills to be effective at driving sustainable change, I see a need for them to have a right-hand person who understands their people and can bridge the gap for them. Many, maybe even most of today's leaders need to be focused on what is right for the bottom line, and they're not able to take into account the impact that their business decisions will have on the people around them. So that's a sweet spot for me and others like me. We're naturally focused on the people. We bring interpersonal intelligence that can sustain a team through change and help them grow through it. But in today's business environment, with the mindset of our newer and younger colleagues quickly becoming the norm, I believe a good leader either has to have relationship building strength or partner with someone who does. And this is separate from HR, because many HR departments are renaming themselves to indicate their relation to people, but their function is different than what we're talking about here. They can't be relied on for daily interaction with any specific team. To me, this is the beauty of knowing people well and understanding their strengths. Everyone can be encouraged to do what they do best and to partner with people who excel in areas that don't come easily to them. This is the foundation of teamwork, right? It's about self-awareness and humility. A great leader uses both to make the right decisions for the team, especially in preparation for change. And I think anyone who is assessing a leader to see if they're going to be able to manage through change needs to look at this self-awareness. Do they know their strengths? Do they know what they need support in? And their humility, are they willing to ask for help?
That's a great point. Your comments make me think of 2 things we need to look at. Honestly, what you just said to me, I feel like it's almost a revelation in the way we need to be thinking about building teams and hiring people leaders. So maybe we need to start a movement here. But I heard 2 things. I heard people leaders could either really flex their relationship building skills, whether it's an inherent talent or if not, really build that muscle, knowing that it will help carry teams through change. Alternatively, if it just doesn't seem like an option to really spend time on relationship building, like you said, if they're really strong in executing, influencing, and strategic thinking, and it feels like an uphill climb to try to really flex that muscle and build it and spend time with it, having that right hand person, so whether it's a chief of staff or just simply someone on the team who's passionate about creating cohesion in the team. But that person would have to have in their job description, like that would have to be a dedicated part of their role. Because I really do think, especially, I mean, you mentioned the younger generation, if the people leader isn't going to take on that coaching role, then someone needs to, on behalf of the team, and it needs to be taken seriously rather than, oh, when Michelle has time on top of her day job, maybe she'll be able to do this for us. So I think we'd have to be careful with that. But I love, being able to be keenly aware of the talents on your team so that when relationship building is not your domain, you have someone who complements you, who can support the team.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm so strong in relationship building that it inherently makes me less strong in all of the other domains. And it certainly is to my benefit to partner with people who are different than me. And the hard part about that is people who are different than you see things differently, behave differently. And sometimes that creates conflict. So you have to go into it with the mindset of, we're better together, right? Diversity is a benefit. And when you look at someone else and see them as, wow, they're so different and they're a gift to me, and I can see their strength and I can pull it out and I can lean on it, then it tends to kind of qualm the bitterness that almost, feels like it can arise, because when two people are completely different, they may not be compatible, but they're definitely complementary.
I love that perspective, and I think that's your developer talent shining through, seeing people's potential and not seeing it as an opportunity for conflict, but rather an opportunity to stand together and leverage each other's strengths in a really powerful way. Well, I certainly learned so much from this conversation, Michelle. You brought some really important points to light, and I feel very confident at the end of this dialogue that relationship building is indeed a powerful tool for building resilience in an individual or a team. And I am so grateful that there are people like you out there with such a strong relationship building skill set to carry people through difficult times, because, like I said, it seems to be happening on a daily basis these days.
More
So
and
thank you.
more. Thank you very much for having me. And thank you for being willing to talk about this. Like I said, my team has been laid off, so I have been working through the resume writing and the whole idea of trying to find a new job. And really, the system isn't built for strengths like mine. I'm having trouble, and I'm just so thankful for people like you who are seeing the value in what people like me bring, and hopefully someday it will change and people like me will be sought after. I would love to see it.
Well, it's people like you who will help start that movement towards
I
change.
I would love it.
So let's do this.
Thank you, Rebecca.
We can make the change happen ourselves.
All right. I'm on.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts. And if you would like to learn more about the Empathy Collective, check out our website, theempathycollective.com. Life is too short. Let's take care of each other at work so that together we can make this world a better place.